So I have like,
Tell me
I
things.
already bought an account.
Okay, yeah.
And I went through most of the JS course, but then I switched to another thing. And so I deactivated like just the monthly payment. Can I use the 30-day pass just to finish that one last course I have?
You should be able to. If you cannot, just shoot me an email and I'll admin into your account and make it work.
That works.
So, but there's this cute little intro that I helped write the song for. No sound? Hang on, maybe because just from mine or not from? No, it's fine if this is it, but I just didn't know if there was external
There are.
sounds.
So you gotta plug that in, and then I need the USB. I gotta plug into your USB just so it gets power.
Cool.
We use this for the JavaScript talk.
Cool. Apparently spacebar is not how you press play.
Your website isn't used because your users are confused. Bad UI can be quite deadly. Let's make it sweet and friendly. Make buttons scale and skew. Keyframes animate it too. Change color and use easing. The effect will be quite pleasing. Try rotations and translations and adventures in web animation.
Welcome to Adventures in Web
Animations, yeah. So you get the live version. So yeah.
My name is Alyssa Nigel, and I'll be...
Shh, we're gonna close her out. Make her go away forever.
So I told myself I'm doing that same damn thing.
So yes, if you love what you see tonight and want to know more, or maybe download the slides, practice in browser, please grab a free thing. So tonight we're going to be talking about web animations, and primarily this is done on the web with CSS. How many of you are like HTML and CSS front-end masters? We've got one solo cup in the air. How many of you are comfortable? How many of you could make a header show up on a page? Okay, we got like half of you, most of you. I feel like you all are way too humble. I'm just okay. All right. So a lot of the stuff in this course is based on if you have an understanding of HTML and CSS. So if I ever say something that doesn't make sense, just stop me or yell at me or something, and we can pause because this is live. Okay. So guiding users online, we use the tools that we have. These are things like font, color, and motion, which leads us to the reason of wanting web animations. And like in this song, your site may be unused, or maybe you just want to add a feeling to your site. Maybe you just want to make something more of a prominent call to action. There's lots of different reasons. But users, like pieces on a game board, must be guided. So in the course I cover transitions, transforms, keyframes, and animating SVGs. Tonight we'll see how much we get through. Let me know if you're feeling bored. We can get saucy with it. Otherwise, we'll just keep going through. I never know, like, if the audience is like, oh my gosh, could you go faster? Or, oh my gosh, this is so over my head.
You said that we're going to be learning transitions. Are we going to be learning background transitions as well?
Yes. Like to a background color?
No, transitioning one color to another.
Yes, yes.
Because I'm having trouble with that.
Oh, excelente. I think that's Spanish. I would try to practice. Okay, so any of the examples in this course or in our talk tonight is within this Sweetlands app. So it's just a website that we invented that is to sell Sweetlands, the game. And so this is me scrolling through it and kind of showing you the different sections. And so like this button or this modal, like they all have different little animate-y things. Yes, yes, working knowledge, we talked about that. Okay, so transitioning color, my dear friend, is what we're going to be talking about first. So every day, even, do you guys know Dan Denny? Nobody? Some people? He's kind of really good at CSS. That's an understatement. Even he gets confused between transitions and transforms all the time. Like we were pairing one day and we were like, why isn't it working? I don't know. Why isn't it working? I don't know. So we keep refreshing and finally we realized that we had swapped those two words yet again. So just to give an upfront clarify, transition is what's going to cause a property to change over a period of time. And that period of time is called a duration. So instead of a color changing instantly from white to pink, if you use a transition, it's going to change over time. So it doesn't change the start state or the end state, it just changes how it happens. Like you're giving it, oh, I want this to happen over 4 seconds or over 0.2 seconds. So a reason here that we gave for using a transition is this button is obviously the whole point of the app itself is to sell this game. So the Buy Now button, we could make it more prominent by using CSS transitions. Let's jump right into the code. Here is our anchor in our HTML with the Buy Now text. And then the CSS, which is grabbing that button class, we're going to go ahead and give it a background color. And that hex is that blue color. And so that's the initial state of the button. When you refresh the site, it will be that blue color. We then say .button hover, and we give it a background color that is a darker blue. So is everybody with me? Most people comfortable with this amount of HTML and CSS? Yes, maybe. Woo! With your
With my
skibbledy-boo? I don't know what it's called. Randomizer? Randomizer.
It's 7:30 Uhr.
I'm so sorry about that.
That was a random.
Ich liebe Deutschland, and I have my computer talk to me in German. So, she won't be doing that again unless we hit the next half-hour mark. So, all right. So this, thus far, is not any animation. It's just simply jumping from this color to that color on hover. But you can transition. Oh, this is a good note. So if we said this top one in hex, and then in this bottom one we used a keyword, it would still transition it. You can transition color in any form from any form, which is kind of weird, and most people like to be consistent, but it's good to know. So right now, when you hover over the button, it's just jumping from one color to the next. So we can use the transition to go ahead and change that. And this is the transition recipe. You literally just specify transition and then the property you want to change and the duration of time you want it to take. So for our background color, we will say transition, background color, and then 0.4 seconds. Now you can see when you hover over, it's not an instant change. Now notice this isn't like glaringly, oh my God, you did what now? Like it's just a slight 0.4 seconds. But these subtleties on a website will add up. And honestly, you don't want transitions or even design for that matter that makes your user think. You want it to be subtle and unconscious but feel right, like a gut feeling. So that's just like a side note of maybe don't make your transition last 5 seconds so that your user's like, what? So continuing on. The fastest transition easily seen is 0.256. That's rough, obviously, but don't make it any faster. Otherwise, it's basically instant because our eyes can't see it. So yeah, 0.25 is an easier number to remember. You can transition multiple properties. And I love this because it's both the background color and the font color. So let's say on our initial state we want it white, but on the hover state we want it off-white, darker gray. Again, super subtle, not fireworky, but it will add up. In the dot button, our default here will specify color of FFF, which is white. And then on the hover, we'll do E3, which is that off-white. And then simply by comma separating it, you can just keep on adding the things that you want to transition. Make sense? All cool? So now on hover, both of the things are transitioning over 0.4 seconds. So since both the background color and the color are being transitioned with the same 0.4 seconds amount of time, you can shorten this by saying all. and this all keyword, something to watch out for, is that anything that can transition will transition because you're saying all. With buttons, they're super compact. I mean, there's not a lot going on there. But later on with like a modal example, you might have different things and different components inside that you want to have separate times. You don't want it to all go together. So it's a nice shortener, but not to be used everywhere. And that is just me showing that it really does work still. So with the transition recipe, we've so far only covered property and duration. There are some other things that you can go ahead and pass into it, but order is irrelevant except for the numbers. So let's go ahead and say the property, which defaults to all. So technically, we could have just said transition 0.4 seconds, and it would have still worked because it would default to all. The timing function, which defaults to ease, which we might get to, and then the delay, which defaults to 0. Sadly, the duration, he defaults to 0 as well, so if you don't specify, it's not going to animate, obviously. So you have to specify, if nothing else, a duration. And I think, yes, that is what I did here. So I went ahead and showed that behind the scenes, like if we say transition 0.4 seconds, it's actually doing all with the ease, with the 0. It's like all still there, and you don't need to specify it unless you want to change it. Yes, so leave defaults out unless you need to change them. Vendor prefixes, anybody know what that means? Nobody? Okay, so, yeah?
Is it vendor prefixes? Is it the code for different apps like Safari?
Yeah, exactly it. So all the examples that I've gone through or that I will go through is without these vendor prefixes, but in production, it's kind of a need, especially if you're using more edge case animation type things. So for each of these guys, WebKit is used for Safari and Chrome, -moz for Firefox, MS for IE, and then O for Opera. Usually you can use something that adds these to your code. It's just like called an auto prefixer, or you can manually type them out. Ew. So which properties need prefixes though? I use a site called Can I Use? Has anybody ever used it? It's useful for so many things. And it will go ahead and let you know, for instance, if we say, can I use keyframes? It will go ahead and pull up each of these browsers and let you know if they support it and if they need a prefix. But again, if you want to do this in production, go ahead and Google auto prefixer because doing this manually seems very painful. So next up is transitioning position. So moving in content that's hidden is another really common use for animations. So if I have something that's hidden and off screen, instead of it just all of a sudden appearing, you can move it in or swing it in or do a bajillion awesome fun things. So this button here has some extra hidden content, our Buy Now button. Go back and make it happen again. Oh, Keynote, how I loathe thee. Okay, so yes, as you hover, more text comes up, and I'm going to go ahead and walk us through how to do that. Our current anchor, which just says Buy Now, code right here, but the couple steps that it's going to take to get us there is first, we'll create inner spans to hold our content and the additional information, and then we'll add the styles for the initial and hover state. And then lastly, we get to add the transition so that it's not just jumping from one to the other. So first, we simply wrap Buy Now in a span, and I gave it a class of top content. Some people get all fancy and weird with their classes, and I know there's like Great CSS or something. You guys use that? No? No conventions out there? I really, really like despise the short ones that are really not semantic, but I'm just sticking with top content, bottom content. It made sense to me. And we're going to go ahead and create a second span with our additional information. So I just said on sale $59. And so currently what this looks like is the buy now is in the button, and then you have on sale overflowing and looking so gorgeous, and you're like, ship it. I mean, my button's done. No, I'm kidding. JK, guys. So yes. So setting the initial position of each of these. Do you guys know positioning? Yes? No? Yeah? So in order to position these, I gave the button position relative, the content inside the button, so anything with a class of content, position absolute, and that means position me relative to my nearest positioned parent or document. That sounds weird and kind of crazy, especially if you don't do positioning. So definitely just try to remember that if you have a big mama wrapper and you want the children in the mama wrapper to listen only to that wrapper, you can give mama relative and children absolute. And then they will be positioned relative to the mom. Kind of, hopefully, makes a little bit more sense.
Because if you don't do that, they're not with mama, right?
That or, yes, that or you have to, so it gets weird, but basically mom is our new 0. So instead of listening to the document's 0, or like starting over here at the top left of the document, it would start at the top left of the mom kind of thing. And then you start positioning it from there. So we're just giving our top class, top of 0. And so that is the top of the button, 0 pixels. And we're going to go ahead and give our bottom class, say, hey, class of bottom, go ahead and be at 100 pixels, which is the bottom of the button. So does that make sense? Does that not make sense? Is everybody completely, thoroughly lost? Where are we at? Yes.
Do you need Java for this, or is it completely reliable?
Oh, no, yeah. There's nothing. You slap this in the HTML, and you slap this in a CSS file, and make sure that the HTML is including the CSS file, and you can just open index.html, and it will run, and it'll work. It doesn't require any back-end behavior or anything. So, okay, so we got it all set up so that it's positioned initially. But now we need to set the new positions for on hover. So as you saw in the example, when I hovered over the button, I want buy now to go up and on sale to go up. So we're just statically saying, okay, well, when the top class on button hover, we want it to be -100, and the bottom class on button hover, we want to be 0. So you're literally just saying, okay, subtract 100 from where you just were, and it will move both of those up. Ba-doo.
We love you.
How to show up when you want.
Sergio! Hi, Sergio.
I gave you guys a big old plug-in for the while.
So currently right now, we have the normal state, the initial state, and the hover state. But now we need to actually add some transitions.
There's veggie for you.
Sorry, guys. So we are going to go ahead and select our content, which, if you'll remember, we had both of these spans here have a class of content. So we're saying everything content, position relative, and then, which we'd already set. I don't know why that was animated again. And then we'll say transition top to 0.3 seconds. Now at this point, you can see that both of them are still visible. However, I just want this to play over and over again. So both of them are still visible on hover and even like hitting that paragraph there, which is so hideous. But I wanted to leave it like that so that you could actually see it's happening. They're both moving. The final thing, we're going to get there, I promise. The final thing that we need to do is hide this overflowing text. which is as easy as saying content overflow hidden. So now when you hover over the button, it's doing what we wanted. It was doing the previous code of changing the background color, the text color, and now it's also transitioning this content up and down. So yes, that was transitioning position. You have to kind of have a grasp on positioning relative to a parent for that to make a lot of sense, but we do have other courses, and then there's also the beautiful, docs online. So the last thing with transition is visibility. Scrolling through our web app. So when we click the button, a form pops in and out. And have you guys built forms before online? Yeah? You like pop it in and out, you like animate it in, or you just like let it instantly come in? Come in from the side, fancy. So when you're creating a form in overlay, which we did, I just went ahead and sliced it up to try to make it super easy to understand. This chunk right here is creating the header, and then this chunk right here is creating the inner content to the modal. And then the div up top with modal overlay, he's being styled so that he has an opaque purple background. So in order to make our modal come in, we'll go ahead and select the class of modal and the class of modal overlay and give them a visibility of hidden and opacity of 0 by default. We don't want you there. Bye. No, I'm kidding. When you load up the site, you don't want the overlay and the form there. By default, we want them hidden. So, yes, load up the site. You can still see and read the site as normally. However, when the button is clicked and a class of active is given to the modal and the modal overlay, we want to change the opacity to 1. It's a toggle, 0 or 1. Obviously, you could do in between, but I want my modal and modal overlay to be fully viewable. And then just give visibility visible. So on click of that button, it will pop in instantly. You might be wondering, though, why we chose to do opacity and visibility over display none. Does anybody have any ideas why we chose to do this? It's kind of in the...
Display none just removes the page.
Right, it does, which is what we're technically doing. We're just removing it and adding it to the page. However, not everything can be transitioned. So display none is one of those fun ones that can't be transitioned. So if we, because you're right, it removes the element from the DOM. So it's no longer clickable, which is the 2 reasons. We can't just say opacity 0, because then our overlay would still be there and nobody would be able to click or scroll. Like, you have to not only make it not visible, but you have to take it off the page. And so whenever you're transitioning, like hidden content on, make sure that you use these 2 to hide and not display none, because you won't be able to transition display none. So yes, on button click, our overlay, in order to transition it, all we have to say is transition opacity 0.5 seconds. That's literally it. And now on click, it will fade in. And it's super subtle again, but I'm gonna play it one more time because it's not looping. Boop. So on click, it just kind of comes in instead of popping in instantly. But did anybody notice that it disappeared right away? It didn't fade out. And this is because we have to transition both properties, which, as we learned earlier, you can just add a comma, add a comma. Nobody wants to sing with me? You guys are horrible. All right, visibility, 0.5 seconds. Or, as we talked about earlier again, you can just say transition all. Because up to this point, we don't need anything to be happening at a different rate. So back to the whole display none can't be transitioned, what the heck. That was fun whenever I first found out that certain properties can't be, because in my mind I was like, anything is possible. A good rule of thumb, doesn't work all the time, guys. I already had somebody tweet at me. They're like, this doesn't work everywhere. And I'm like, it's a rule of thumb. So a good rule of thumb is that ask yourself, does it have a middle state? If it doesn't have a middle state, what would it transition with? So opacity is a really good example of this. Like we said, you can toggle 0 or 1, but you could also set your opacity to 0.5 and have a semi-opaque whatever on your page. That is a possibility. So it transitions. Whereas with display, your two options are none and block. So what would your middle state be? It'd be like display it sort of. Like there's not a middle state, therefore it doesn't transition. This gorgeous list that's going to take forever to animate is the properties that Alyssa thought was important enough to put in the slide that will transition. So all of these things, font size, you can transition your font and say, be really small, be really big. Word spacing, visibility, all of those. And they're not set in stone. They change as often as anything on the web changes. So you can check out the full list. That is just a link to the docs that has the full list, so that in case they ever change it, we can make our own. But you can always just Google transitionable properties in CSS to find out. So am I out of time? I wanted to find out if I had time to go over transform, rotate, or if I needed to pass the ball. Ideas? 3 minutes. Okay. There was a talk today on giving estimations, and I really didn't have time in that 5 seconds to come up with a range and do the proper estimating thing. I felt really bad about that. Okay, so transitions, which is everything we just talked about, is one way to animate. There's also transforms. These let you modify an element. So you can do things like rotate, translate, you can scale things, and you can also skew things. I left skew out because I don't get it. Skew is when you do something really wrong and you didn't do it proportionally in my mind. So I don't really understand the point of skew, therefore I left it out. So what we're doing in this section is rotating the modal close icon. So see the little X over yonder? And you hover over him and he spins. He's so cute. Okay, so the initial styles for the X, which we'll just zip right over, are right there. Boop-a-doo. And then on modal close hover, we're going to say transform, rotate 360 degrees, and that is it. Literally, that's all that was required. Rotate takes a couple of different units. So instead of 360, you could pass it turns also. But sometimes you don't want a whole turn. So, ba-dum.
Half a turn?
I haven't tried it. I'm a degree girl, all right? Don't sass me for loving degrees. That should be on a t-shirt.
Well, if you put 180 over 360, that's still kind of degrees.
What do you mean?
180 degrees, so you could just put 180 over 360, it's a fraction and a degree.
Oh, okay, so you want to get mad scientist over here is what you're saying, and just you'd be one of those people. I would open your code and it would be degrees over here, and then the very next line I'm using turns, and I'm like, no, and then you're pixels and then M's, and then I just slack you and hit you in the face or something. yes, so it's currently, when we're hovering, nothing is happening, but secretly it is happening. Does anybody know why? Anybody? Why can't we tell that the X is rotating? Because I promise you it is rotating. The browser is rotating that X 360 degrees.
That's just so, but it's not.
It's happening instantly! That woman gets a shirt! Yes, it's happening instantly. Sorry, I got way too excited about that. I'm so sorry. Woo!
Go back to your caffeine.
No, that would be the end of Alyssa.
So by the way, nobody should ever scale back their caffeine. It's just dangerous.
I am supported here. My caffeine intake is supported. So it's happening instantly, and the way, as we learned in the last level, to change that is to add a transition. So this is happening over 4 seconds. It's probably one of the only things I've ever put that high. And it's kind of annoying to me anyways. I'd probably in real life make it 2. So, so adding transition transform, because transform is one of those awesome properties that can be transitioned, allows you to see the icon actually changing state. Woohoo! So timing functions, which we did mention way back long ago. Does anybody know the word cubic Bezier? No? Nobody? Ooh, I got a half raise over by David.
Line theory.
Do what?
Line theory.
Yes, yes. It's a mathematical term, but it's also used as many things in code. But it's used here because technically, these are our options here with our timing functions. And technically, behind the scenes, all of these timing functions are that last one, cubic Bezier. I'm going to spare you the boring stuff. So it defaults to ease, which is what we've used thus far. But if we wanted to slap on a fancy new timing function, like ease out, boop-a-doo. So it's hard to tell with the rendering, but it does go slower. It goes faster and then slower, because it's easing out. I mean, thank God for semantic naming. So it's a super subtle change, as with all things in animation, but you have the capability to change the timing function. Again, it's going to, if you're going to say 4 seconds, it will start at 0 seconds and it will end that animation at 4. The timing function just changes how it animates between. So ease out, for instance, is going to make the change happen fast and then slow down the rates. It's kind of like frame rates almost, a good way to think about it. So yeah, that is all I'm going to cover tonight. But again, if you want to finish up or do the challenges, Alyssa Nichol, everyone. Yes? Codeschool.com, and there's a free stack of monthly whatever subscriptions. That's the word for it. Nouns escape me. But yes, please grab a free subscription and jump on to Code School. And that course, if you didn't catch it, Adventures in Web and Animations, that's what you need to find is that one. So yeah, all right. So the wonderful, miraculous David is next. Woo woo. Oh yes, ask questions in the meantime, please, yes.
A lot of those behaviors can be, on the event side, can be like triggered by JavaScript and then JavaScript and controlled CSS. When do you recommend just using plain CSS over JavaScript and vice versa?
I recommend always using CSS over JavaScript for performant reasons, but there are times, obviously, when, there are times when, whether it's because your team requires you to use a framework or you want to do something, because all of that, if you'll notice, like we just spent how long talking about that, and we didn't do that much, at least in Alyssa's opinion.
How's this work?
So the reason, of course, to use a framework with JavaScript, something like Snap
click the
or
other 1080 really quickly.
there's a couple of good ones, GreenSock, would be
click
to
on
speed it up. I mean, if they have a method that'll be like,
oh,
there we go, never mind.
Right,
but I don't want
and I can just like say,
this
yeah,
is
rotate that. I
weird.
mean, it's a lot easier. And honestly, I think it depends on all the crazy stuff you want to do, because that's not going to slow you down that much if you do it in JavaScript. It just depends. But
Again,
CSS is
hit display.
so.
Because you changed it, so
Any other
you changed
questions?
over.
You guys good? Yeah. Just
Weird might be better, dude.
what? Easier.
That's what I've always done.
Easier for the browser to handle.
Just do
So, I don't. Have you ever seen things get chunky?
Why is it
Have you ever
do
been
that?
on like
I don't know, I've never seen something
bad
turn your display
network,
on.
and then all of a sudden a site looks off, and then all of a sudden it pops in and it looks right, or
It won't even
cover
let us
something and
change
it
the
doesn't
display
happen, and it
settings.
happens a second
Just
later or
put your
something
back
like.
on.
Sergio, do you want to tackle this?
I want,
I'm
like,
really bad at
speaking
saying
notes.
performance.
There you go. So then go
He
back to
wants to know
scale.
that like what is performant.
Like the other
Like
1080.
I said, CSS is more performant. Like do your animations there instead of JavaScript. And he was like, well, what does performant mean? What you're explaining performance.
I would summarize it because,
Just
like,
cancel it.
so the browser's
Dude,
optimized
we just played this
to
game already.
understand
It's gonna work
CSS,
magically.
Whereas with JavaScript,
If it doesn't,
you're
it'll go
actually
back.
doing
Damn
all
it,
the
it
edits
Told you.
manually. So You know, it's not like a native.
Actually, it might work. Hold on, click that.
So anything that's native
Mirror
will
displays?
always be more
No,
performant right out of the box.
What?
Now you can get
Click back on
like,
this
just like
really quickly.
Yeah.
crazy
Just saw it there.
mad
Click the other
scientist
1080.
kinda crazy and actually
It didn't show us that last time.
more performant thing.
Oh, maybe it's on the other screen.
But it takes a lot
There
of
you
work
go.
for entry
Oh,
CSS and
whoa,
just work
what?
out of the box.
Oh, well, the mirror displays.
Oh, well then no wonder why it's working. So never mind. Just leave it.
I read it on the what?
Okay, okay.
Here. Your share presentation. And then that way,
Yeah.
just make it full screen. Like full screen, won't even see the web links.
Oh, where's that? I don't know how computers work.
Slide.
Just with like browser support.
What?
That was
Click that
another
one.
reason, because like
And then go back
I'm
into the
pretty
slide
sure
stuff.
JavaScript works in all browsers.
I can't believe you're,
If
what?
you don't want to worry about interfaces,
Every 2 seconds.
then you can do it on JavaScript. But
Thanks, man.
I mean, the browser support
Sure.
is based
At my birthday party, you
in, like, a
missed.
lot better than Jeffrey's Element. So.
I will make sure we get to your Halloween party.
Okay.
We don't have anything else to do. There you go.
Oh, right, where's the mic?
Alright, everybody. Okay. Time for David's talk. I saw the picture.
All right. Fellow developers and Caitlin, today we're talking about giving
Hey, she
Bootstrap.
counts. She totally counts.
Oh,
She's
alright.
one of us.
She quit. So. We're going to be talking about giving our favorite framework, Bootstrap, the boot, getting rid of it completely. And, you know, I know I'm sort of dissing Bootstrap here, so I guess I should explain myself, who I am. My name is David Khorshid. I am a front-end web developer, or at least you better hope so if I'm giving this presentation. And I wish my slides were as cool as Alyssa's, because they are really freaking cool.
Totally added that in last minute, didn't you?
No. So, I'm assuming here that we were all bootstrappers at one point. Either we still are, you guys probably still are, or you once were. I was a bootstrapper. Ever since Bootstrap came out, I was like, you know, eager to learn the next version and play around with it. And then I just threw my hands up in the air and I was like, why am I still fighting with Bootstrap? But yeah, some of us still are, and I'm really sorry about that. We've all made Bootstrap websites, every single one of us. We all have our reasons for doing so. Most of us had read the Bootstrap docs, you know, all whatever 100 pages of it. And we all know that tight deadlines means shipping Bootstrap. You know, you have a site, it's like, it's due in 2 days. All right, there's this cool thing called Bootstrap. I could get it done in 1. So, what's wrong with Bootstrap? I'm glad you asked. Well, that's probably what you came here today. You were like, what's this guy talking about? Well, for one, Bootstrap is huge. I mean, you could customize your build. You won't, though. You're too lazy. But because it's just as easy as going to the content delivery network, copying the link, throwing it on your site, and being like, I'm done. There's Bootstrap. I don't care if it takes my users like 6 minutes to load the web page. It's done. It also ignores design and is too prescriptive. It gives classes for telling you exactly what to do instead of what things mean. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. And Alyssa sort of touched up on that too with semantic class naming. It's very difficult to customize an original design. In fact, I think that there are 2 types of Bootstrap websites. There's the ones that all look the same, and then there's the other Bootstrap sites where you're like, no way, that's done in Bootstrap. Do not dig into the code. It's like, here's Bootstrap, and here's all the crap that we had to do to undo Bootstrap and get our custom styles. It also screams, I can't afford a designer. In fact, if you use Bootstrap, designers probably hate you. Again, you have a lot of non-semantic markup, which leads to lots and lots of divs.
I feel
And
like we should probably define that word since we keep using it.
divide us?
Semantic.
Oh, semantic. Semantic means what it means. It means what it's a super confusing definition, but it's like, I don't know. Anyway. Also, I don't know if any of you guys have tried upgrading Bootstrap, like Bootstrap 2 to 3, and now Bootstrap 3 to 4, but it's really, really hard. It's going to eat up days, if not weeks, of your life, because there's lots of refactoring, style tweaking, and goat sacrifices. And I'm not for goat sacrifices, so.
You're not?
No, not at all. I love goats. So, some of you might say, listen, dude, I'm actually really, really good at Bootstrap, okay? I can make any design with it. I mean, Donald Trump is also good at campaigning. Doesn't mean that we should let him be doing what he's doing. It's actually not a very good argument, but whatever. So if you don't know what Bootstrap is, raise your hand. Shame yourself. There we go. Cool. I'm kidding. So Bootstrap is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework in the world for building responsive websites. And it does have some redeeming quality. I actually took a screenshot of the Bootstrap site, and that's what was there. So first of all, Bootstrap is really good for super fast prototyping. You need to get something done quick, you use Bootstrap, or you use Foundation or another framework that you're really familiar with. I'm not going to argue it's a really good use for Bootstrap. Yes, it is bad. You could also use Bootstrap's components. They're already mixed in with jQuery. Bootstrap version 4 is using ES6. But yeah, it's just add water and it works. The drop-downs are really useful, the modals too, everything. There's also hundreds of components, and you could use a lot of them. You probably won't, though. And you also don't need to hire a designer because it's like, hey, cool, Bootstrap already does the design for me. I don't want you to be that guy right there on the toilet. Because
is that an airplane?
No,
oh.
Maybe. He's on a toilet, though, where his code belongs. Instead, I want you to be like this girl. She codes modular components from a pattern library, follows all of the best practices of CSS or Sass or whatever she uses, and she's showing that guy what he did wrong, which is use Bootstrap.
What women do best.
So, also, you probably heard Bootstrap Experience looks great on the resume. It's a really popular framework, so I'm just going to put it in there. I'm really good at Bootstrap. Being good at Bootstrap and putting that on your resume is like applying to be a chef and saying you're really good at ordering Chipotle. It's not the same thing. So companies are also culpable of this. They say you have to have experience with Bootstrap in order to work for our company. Now, when I see that, I see this. You must be willing to fix whatever our last developer did to Bootstrap. We just probably add all of his crazy spaghetti code. If you see this, look elsewhere. There's plenty of jobs, okay? Unless you really like Bootstrap, then, go for it. But I promise you, any job that says you need experience with Bootstrap, it's like maybe 10% Bootstrap and 90% the other crap I was talking about. Yeah. Oh my God. Don't get me started. Yeah, probably.
No, it's definitely below Bootstrap
on
the crap scale.
Yeah. It's like boot crap. But all right, so is Bootstrap inherently bad per se? Not necessarily. For example, you might be new to web development. A lot of new web developers use Bootstrap as a starting point. And in fact, it's really good to dig into the code, see how they're doing everything. And in fact, I will confess, I found myself diving into the Bootstrap documentation to get all of those, like the mobile meta tags and everything else that Bootstrap's doing to make the site mobile ready, because it's the easiest place to find it. So it is very good for a beginner starting off in web development and wanting to figure out how could I do something like Bootstrap. You might also work in a corporate environment where you sometimes have to create admin panels or panels for your coworkers where it's not client-facing. That's the key word. If it's not client-facing, you don't care if it looks like crap, as long as they could use it. You also probably procrastinated badly on projects, and therefore you use Bootstrap. Why? Because Bootstrap is really quick, gets you to that deadline, and the crying part, that's Bootstrap. And also, you love divs a lot. This is what we call device. This is actual Bootstrap code, where you have to put a row in a container, and then if you want to go even deeper, you know, you sort of have to Kamehameha your way into the code. Now, you might also appreciate Bootstrap for being a well-defined set of components with a huge, very helpful community used by tons of websites. In fact, they have galleries where, like, there are some really well-designed websites that use Bootstrap. And there's also thousands of customizable themes because it's so popular. Some of them are free, some of them are for sale, and a lot of them achieve the goal of not looking like every other site. Who agrees with that, or who sort of feels that way? Yeah. We're here to diss Bootstrap, so. So it's time to replace Bootstrap. And you might be asking, okay, but why? Despite me giving like all the reasons, I hope you enjoyed your nap. You have greater control over your styles. This is very important. Bootstrap is mostly about overwriting styles, like the styles that Bootstrap already has. And that's not good. Also, you have more consistent styling because you have control over the styles. When you overwrite one Bootstrap component to be your theme, all of the other components still look like Bootstrap, and we don't want that. And you get to only use the CSS that you need. By writing your own CSS, you're writing it because I'm using this. You're not writing it because, maybe I'll need it, which is what Bootstrap did. That's why Bootstrap has a ton of components that you don't need. And of course, no more divitis. And your designers will not hate you because you're going to be coding pixel perfect for them. And they will love you. So, and how? Before I get to that, I skipped a slide or something. Did I? I might have. Maybe not. Whatever. All right, so, and how? First of all, we're going to be using an architecture. And you probably heard of a lot of them, like SMAX or Atomic CSS. I'm going to be talking about one called the 7.1 architecture really briefly. And then you're going to replace Bootstrap components one by one. So you have your site. It's full of spaghetti code. You start at the smallest component possible, like a button or paragraphs or tags or labels or something. Just something really, really simple. And then from there, you get bigger and bigger. And then eventually, you'll see like, hey, I replaced all of my styles, all of my markup. I could sort of safely remove Bootstrap. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, Bootstrap will probably still always be there because CSS is one of those things where you can't delete anything because you're like, this whole thing might come crashing down. So, gotta be really careful. So, Sass guidelines, really easy. This is done by a French guy called Hugo Girardel. He's a really famous Sass guy. And he's really, really, really good at Sass. He devised this 7.1 pattern, which is pretty simple. There are 7 files: base, components, layouts, pages, themes, utilities, and vendors. And those all go into one main CSS file. This helps because now when you need to edit a style, you know exactly where to put it. I'm sure all of you have worked in Bootstrap environments where you're like, I need to change one thing. Where does it go? Right at the end of the big CSS file. And then you have this long, I don't even want to talk about it. So let's talk about the base. The base is all of your boilerplate code, all of your resets like normalize, and I facetiously add reboots in there. This is a Bootstrap 4 file, which is actually really good because it adds some resets on top of normalize. Also, yeah. Well, I mean, that's only 2. It's not that bad. And you could also have typography in there too. There's layout, which is all of your bigger components like your header, the footer, sidebar, main, navigation, all of the big chunks of your site where you know that there's only 1 or 2 of. And so you could think of these as like giant components. And you could also use components or in your components folder, that's where you put every single tiny part of your website. This is going to be your biggest folder because you're including everything. You're including buttons, labels, forms, fields, headings, basically everything. And feel free to get as granular as possible because remember, you're going from small to bigger. Pages, this is your page-specific styles. Sometimes your designer will be like, all right, we need things to look a little bit different on this one page. This is where you would put your page-specific styles. And usually you want your pages to only affect your layout styles. You don't want them to go into the components. Why? Because your components are already well defined. And then your themes. So there could be different themes on your website. Honestly, you should only use one. And if your designer is saying like, hey, we should have a different admin theme or a different theme for this type of user or whatever, your designer is probably an idiot. So don't listen to him. Or her. There's also the utilities folder. Nothing in this folder will ever be output to CSS. So you have variables, mixins, and functions that you could use all over the place, but no CSS. They're mainly there to help you and to provide settings, configuration, theme variables, stuff like that. And of course, your vendors too. So this is where your third-party styles go. I worked in an application where we had to include, for example, a date picker from Kendo UI, which is terrible also. I might give another talk on that. Actually, probably not. But Kendo comes with its own styling, and when you're in a time crunch, you're like, there's already a specific style. They did whatever to their classes. I don't want to mess with it. You stick it in the vendors folder so that Kendo could appropriately style those files, and you don't need to worry about it, at least for now. So this looks a little bit complicated, but it's really not. Take your button component, for instance. You put all your styles for your button component, and then you import your button in like your components index file, and then you import that index file in your main file where there will be those 7 files that we talked about. And I'll link you to this later, but this is the order that we talked about for how to load your files in. So if this is too much work, there is a Sassy boilerplate. You could click this. I will put it online. I'm not going to click it now, but I Google image boilerplate and that came up. I don't know what the hell that is, but you should click it and find out. All right, so that's all good and dandy, but we still need to override the Bootstrap styles. So our solution, or at least a solution that I used in like the past few companies I worked for, is to make an override class. And so what this override class does is it makes your components more specific. And so we're going to use Goatstrap for it. So that's going to be our override. So take Bootstrap components, for instance. You see here, like a primary button has 2 classes, and that's how it's selected. So anyone here knows specificity or how to spell it, at least? There you go. All right, so what would the specificity of this be?
Oh, the actual number?
Yeah, 2. Well, yeah, so 0202 because there are 2 classes. Pretty easy, right? Now, let's say that you have your really sexy buttons and you don't want to use Bootstrap's ugly buttons. So we are nesting, and this is like the only place where it's okay to nest in my opinion, but we define our button with whatever class we want. You know, you could use BEM or you could use something less ugly, or I don't know, Alyssa probably has lots of good ideas for classes too. Just don't make your classes complicated. Bootstrap's done enough of that. But what would the specificity of this be? I'll give you a clue. It's higher than 2.
3.
Yeah. Wow, you guys are great. 3. Okay. So these buttons will override our Bootstrap buttons, which is good. So just to expound on this classes part, be semantic. Now, I'll try to give a better description of what semantic is. Semantic means you're describing what it is, and you're not trying to like prescribe how it looks. So let's take a dog, for instance. We're going to make an imaginary dog component. And let's say I give it the class my dog. That's semantic, right? We're describing, my dog. And my dog can also have an attribute like poor eyesight because the dog's wearing glasses. Now, let's say we have a different dog, like this one. It's a pug, by the way. So this we don't want to do. We don't want to have my dog and smush face in. This is the equivalent of writing like my dog column width or column medium 10 or whatever, or margin 10 or padding whatever. We don't want to describe or prescribe styles like that. So a better one would be describing what it actually is. So my dog, pug. I mean, that describes what it is. Pug is a modifier to my dog. Both of these are dogs, so they share the class my dog. And you could also call this my dog butt pug. Same thing. All right, so what about grid layouts? Let's say that we need to make something like this. You guys probably heard the Bootstrap grid is great. I use it everywhere. By the way, the Bootstrap grid is crap. I'll show you why. To create this, we have to put all these divs in. Does this look semantic? What the hell is a call mid 8 or row or container? I mean, they're sort of semantic, but they're sort of prescriptive too. They're like, make this column 8, columns wide. It's not very prescriptive. So what we could do instead is give semantic names to each of these sections, like layout main, aside, footer, and the main has 2 blocks. And then our layout becomes just this. Of course, we're name strapping with goat strap. I don't know if you guys could see that. I can't zoom in, so deal with it. We have layout main, and inside, content. And just as you would expect, 2 blocks inside of content, and then you have your aside and your footer. And then you would do the styles yourself inside of your style sheets. And there are many good tools for doing this. You could use Singularity, Suzy. If you search for just, grid, SAS grid stuff, you're going to find a lot of stuff. And you could also do it yourself. It's really not that hard. So we have example code here. I'm going to go over it real quick. Many of you are familiar with float layouts. So we're just giving the content a width of 8/12, which is about that wide. And then the aside 4/12, which is a little less wide, right on the side. Or you could use Flexbox if you want to. So SAS seems pretty cool. What are some of the best practices? I got you covered, guys. We have SAS guidelines, which I actually wrote a section in. I know many of you don't care, but you should care. I also wrote 3 articles on aesthetic SAS. And you could, there's just a ton of resources on SAS, and there's going to be many more. Why? Your friend, now enemy, Bootstrap. Bootstrap version 4 is coming out completely in SAS, which means there's going to be a handful of developers eager to learn SAS, which means there's going to be new articles, new educational resources, but there are already a ton. Honestly, if you guys don't know SAS, now's the time to learn, especially if you want to use Bootstrap, but don't. All right, so also, to wrap this up real quick, I'm talking at SAS Summit. It's the virtual live CSS preprocessor conference. It's on November 19th, and you could use the code DAVID for 15% off if you want to hear me rant more about this type of crap. So, let's go get beer. Oh, any questions?
Any questions for him, guys?
Yeah.
Bootstrap is so horrible and like draining users and things. What would be a good application to use?
For what? What are you trying to do?
Site serve for making apps, things like that.
I guess just building it yourself.
Yeah, you could build it yourself. If you're not comfortable with learning to code, or you really just want to get maybe a toe wet, you don't want to get your feet wet so much, there's this app called Webflow. Not sure if you heard of it, but what Webflow does is it allows you to drag and drop things, but it also makes you somewhat familiar with CSS itself, because it just goes and does the whole sort of class paradigm where you're defining each of your components and each of their variants. So this is pretty helpful, and it's good for learning to code somewhat. There's also Code School, by the way. I don't teach at Code School. I teach at Goat School. Sort of the same thing.
I would totally be a student. Of Goat School?
Goat School.
Yeah. I'd be there. Hell yeah.
Anyone else?
What's the difference between less and SAS?
SAS is more than less. SAS has more, number one, SAS is currently more popular than less, and SAS has a lot of features that make it feel more like a real programming language, even though it's not. Don't let the $sign fool you. I know it looks like a PHP variable, but PHP is not a real language either, so. I'm kidding. It has things like for loops, while loops, just things that you have to do a lot of backflips and twists in order to get working in less. Yes?
2 questions. What was the name of the SAS conference?
It's called SAS Summit, and I'm going to put the links online, or the slides, so that you could get the link. It's actually an online conference, which means you guys, this is the first time that you could actually attend a conference in your underwear without getting kicked out. So.
Underwear?
Yeah. You know what? I would not go to that. Second question?
Second question, when you're talking about like grid layout and stuff, can you just do that in HTML5, or is it better to do it in something like SAS?
Well, HTML is for you laying out your markup and saying, this is what everything is. Like I have my main layout, and I have my aside, and I have my footer.
It's like your structure.
Your structure, yeah. And so in SAS, that's where you would say, okay, main layout, you're going to be half the width, and the side you're going to be this much, and the footer you're going to be in the bottom. Yeah. So that's an important point too. Your HTML, always write your markup the way you want it to look. It's sort of like Dream Code. Don't write it to a framework like Bootstrap or less. Write it to something that's future-proof. So if you have a class that's layout main, and you have a class of my button, for instance, no matter what framework you use, or if you decide to use something else or create your own thing, it's still going to be .my button. You're still styling the same thing. So that's why markup, semantic markup is very important. Anyone else? Yeah.
How can I do a hover thing on inline styles?
You can't. You can't, Sergio. Just can't.
Alright, are we good on questions, guys? Because I like to give away some swag. Alright. Yo, shit. So let's see if I can troll myself this time. Otherwise, I'll keep YouTube rolling. If I am going to troll myself, then I will shut down YouTube. So. So, on that note, that's why we're not tweeting Bootstrap. Oh, by the way, we just had a 30-minute discussion about how much you suck. So.
I don't know, did you see NG What? There was like a What talk at like NGConf, and there was this guy making fun of Angular and like leaning over the stage and going, so why did you do that to the makers of Angular? It was hilarious. So I feel like people are pretty open to
good point.
In our community.
So, on your response to the whole whether or not to use Bootstrap or anything, or how to create your own with the help of people, because I don't program, that's the CSS portion to my raffle.
Woohoo!
See how clean and pretty that is?
I'm so proud of you.
There's that, there's HTML, and there's the JavaScript that built all of this. Which my JavaScript's only 28 lines of code, by the way, guys.
Show it.
Okay, hold on. Bear with me here, kids. There's the JavaScript. Yes, I have to, because I use the local version of it, because I'm not stupid enough to use the GitHub version. If you guys do any stupid, retarded repos, McLean.
No idea what you're talking about.
So that's it. Literally. 20 lines of code. Hi, bye. Did all that on my own with the help of 3 people. But in 3 weeks.
That's a long time.
Hey, she still has a day job.
Yeah. So that was with running 4 meetups a month. Oh, and by the way, I gave this presentation with still a week left before my final was due for my design class, which mind you was a 28-inch model by 12-inch model by like 4 inches tall. And 6 drawings to go along with it. That's why if any of you guys were there for my Ruby meetup that month, it was April, by the way, when I presented all of this crud. Yeah, I was delusional at that Ruby meetup because I did not sleep for 2 days. So, let's get on with it. So I had to put the 7 in front of it because the 0 will go away and therefore it will not actually. I don't want you guys to say I gimmicked anything or messed up anything. So, with that being said, you get the first pick on the t-shirts because Alyssa absolutely loved your answer. So, what size do you normally wear before I even show you what I have? Medium. Okay.
Although that one right there, oh, it pisses me off. Show them. Show them. It's a 2X, and show them how big that shirt is.
Oh my God, really?
Let's talk about women's sizes, shall we? This is a 2X, everyone, in women's. There you go.
How horrible is that?
Continue.
Like, really?
No.
2X?
And you always like every company wherever
So, I'll hold this one up for you as well. It's not actually 2X. Because if I can wear it, it's definitely another 2X. Alright. I'm just being honest. Okay, so here are your options. This one. And get your coat on.
Ooh, I like that one.
You want this one?
Keys.
Okay. Turn that over to you.
I got mine.
You're welcome. Okay. So, these t-shirts are going to vary on your size, guys. Because this was not asked for by Code Schools. They just brought them because they love you guys. So, who are you? You got 2 of them. And I am counting every single number. Oh, come on. I've been talking about tickets for the last 5 minutes. You can't pull your ticket out?
Yes, it's you. I didn't even check. I didn't know this was like.
All right. So here's the book.
Yes.
Colors, backgrounds, and gradient. Fit really well with the talk today that I had no idea was actually going to happen. Fat merchant mug with all sorts of swag in there. Sunglasses and some goodies. And then there are a couple t-shirt options. So that's it.
For the book.
You want the book?
Yes, please.
Smart move. Book always goes first, guys.
Thank you.
Always does. Yeah. Okay. Who are you?
Oh, that's me.
What would you like, my dear?
Do you have a medium?
I don't have another medium.
Do you have a large?
The tank top is a large.
Is it?
Oh, what about?
Is it large or medium?
It's a medium, but
That works. Is that a? Yeah, it works.
woohoo!
That is a pretty sweet.
Heck yeah. These are soft, by the way. Honestly, I would not care. I would sleep in this. All right, who are you?
105.
All right, what would you like? Fat merchant or t-shirt?
Let me go with the mug.
Woohoo! By the way, kids, there's still a lot of what's in this is up there, so make sure when you leave.
But not everything. That has a golf tee.
Ooh.
No, it doesn't.
The actual piece. Hello, my brain's not working. But no joke, I don't want to see any of that tomorrow. I'm being a smart ass, but realistically, seriously, everybody take swag. Take swag. All right, so who are you? Hi. Well, you want a t-shirt or do you want a Cloud Space bag? I'm pretty sure you've got plenty of those running around your house right now. Okay. I do have the small and the lovely, horribly sized 2X that's sitting on my shoulder right now. So this is the small.
I'll take that.
Okay. All right, kids, we only have 3 more left. Possibly. Who are you? As you? Okay. You want a t-shirt or do you want cloud space bag? You want a t-shirt? Okay. So here comes the fun part. These are funky sizes, so if you do not want a large size t-shirt, then we will go off to the next person. I have 2 2X, and then I have, you would actually be able to wear this one.
Let me see the other one.
So those are those. These are 2X.
This one?
This one?
Let me see it. Give me the small one.
Yeah. So guys, like these are like sleep shirts. Like who gives a shit? Okay, ready? Who are you? You guys gotta look at your tickets a lot quicker. These are actual legitimate tickets, kids. Sergio! Do you want a cloud space bag? I think you already have one though.
Yeah, just
Okay. Who are you? Come on, guys. These are real tickets. I handed you out. You again? You want me to skip over you? Because otherwise it's just a cloud space bag. All right, who are you? You want a sleep shirt?
Sure.
Which one? We got that one, and I am all up on YouTube now. And that one. Yellow one?
That's a big shirt.
Hey, like I said, sleep shirts. Or cut it up into like a bro tank. I mean, we're okay with it. Who are you? Would you like a sleep shirt or would you like a cloud space bag?
I love a sleep shirt.
All right. I'm really horrible, guys. Okay. So on that note, hey, I didn't troll myself. I legitimately did not troll myself because YouTube's still running. While me looking like a dork holding that t-shirt on me. All right. So let's close this down and go get beer. Cheers. Woo! Cheers. All right.